Welcome to the Elements of Success podcast with Johnny Dawson. This is the show that will inspire you to uncover your formula for success so you take charge of your story, overcome life's obstacles, and find fulfillment in all branches of life. With Johnny as your guide, you will break down the science of success and experiment with how you can combine key elements to uncover discipline you need to accelerate your journey towards prosperity. Now, on to today's episode.
Welcome to Elements of Success podcast, where we will explore traits that have helped others achieve success. Our hope is to inspire you to discover your own element of success. Today, we're joined with my co-host, Eric Johnson. Eric, how are you today, man?
I am fantastic. Coming off of a podcast we did last time, it was fantastic. It was about empathy, which I was really curious of how you were going to weave that in, but man, it turned out to be a great podcast. So if you haven't heard that, go back and listen to it for sure.
Absolutely. And yeah, I can't wait I've already gotten a few messages from that podcast. And as we continue to go, I'd love to hear your stories of how you've shared empathy along the way in the DMs and the Messenger app and in the comment section, or maybe even in your own grocery store. Feel free to keep sending me those messages. I appreciate it. Eric, today I got a question for you. Are you ready?
I'm ready. I'm all about it.
I don't know if you're ready.
We'll see. Bring it on.
Do you know what the deadliest predator in the world is?
Well, this sounds a little dark, but is it the human?
Well, I guess that's a good guess, but no, that's
Kingdom. Or are we talking?
Yeah, we're talking Animal Kingdom.
Okay. Well, I guess
the human probably does rank up there, but yes, we're talking animals.
Animals. Okay. Man, I would say that. Man, I think it's a tie between maybe the crocodile / alligator. I know there's a difference, but
okay,
one of them or a cheetah.
Ooh, both very good picks. Excellent guesses. However, this may be shocking. The deadliest predator in the world is actually a dragonfly. I knew you were going to laugh.
Curveball, dude.
I knew you were going to laugh.
You're just messing with me now.
So listen. So according to a Harvard study in 2012, a dragonfly manages to capture an amazing 95% of its targeted prey. 95%. That means if the dragonfly says, hey, grasshopper, today's your last day, you have a 95% chance today's your last day.
I'm glad I'm not a grasshopper.
Holy mackerel. That is crazy. Yeah. So let me give you some comparison. A wolf captures only 14% of its prey that it was targeted. The king of the jungle, a lion, only captures 25% of its prey. Mm-hmm. The closest to a dragonfly is actually the cheetah, so that was a good guess.
Right. Points for being number 2.
That's right. But it only captures 58% of its targeted prey.
Okay. Wow.
Which is crazy to think about.
Yeah, that's pretty good, but 95%. Man, that dragonfly is a beast.
Right. I think so. And I think that the element that we're going to talk about today is DNA.
Okay. Man, so why are DNA as an element? That's very interesting. Hang on. How would you? I'm cheating now because you always bring this to me and you always surprise me. Like you surprised me with empathy, but DNA. Okay, so I've got a Google definition, and that makes perfect sense now. This is why you're the brains behind this operation.
What do you got?
Yeah, this is the reason you're the brains behind the operation. DNA, the fundamental and distinctive characteristics or qualities of something or someone. And yeah, I can think of distinctive characteristics of a dragonfly for sure, and they've got specific qualities that probably assist them. Well, we know it assists them in their hunting skills. Wow, that's okay. That's right. Crazy.
So the reason is this. So it's written within the dragonfly's DNA, for example.
There you go.
The eyes of a dragonfly have developed to spot the smallest deviations in motion, meaning that if a grasshopper barely moves his foot, the dragonfly recognizes it. its wings allow it to move in any direction at very fast speeds and capabilities. And one of the most significant components of a dragonfly's DNA is its brain has evolved to allow it to realize and predict future movements that its prey could possibly make, thus always being one step ahead of its prey at all times.
Wow. That's crazy. So it has the ability to adapt and learn, is what it sounds like to me. Wow, that's pretty amazing, man. I love that. I love that comparison. And so DNA being the element that you're talking about today, how does that tie into what we're talking about?
Yeah, great point. I'm glad you brought that up. So what I've realized is that we all have elements written in our own DNA. We all do. And that can be defined, again, as a quality or feature regarded as a characteristic or inherent part of someone or something. So if I could break it down to 3, let's say, DNA characteristics, I would believe that these 3 DNA characteristics are a component to someone's success, thus their element of success. So we know, going back to the dragonfly's eyes can see any motion, the smallest motion. The dragonfly's wings are very advanced, fast rate of speed, and its brain can adapt to things that are changing. I think the 3 DNA components that make us successful are values, attitude, and skill. Now, here's why. Those 3 DNA characteristics, they need to be made equally whole. For example, if you have a very skilled athlete and they have a very poor work ethic and a poor attitude, they are most likely going to struggle to become successful. And then let's say that you have someone who is honest and they have a great attitude, but they're a very poor skilled person. They will also have a very high likelihood of not becoming successful. So when it comes to a balance of these items, you have to have a blend of all 3. You have to have values that are true to who you are, integrity, honesty, empathy. Go back and listen to that episode if you need to. You got to have the right attitude, a positive attitude. You can't be pessimistic and always down on yourself. You've got to have an attitude of confidence, of caring, of ability. And the skill set, well, that skill set is whatever you focus in on and you feel like is your divine mission and purpose in life. You need to develop that skill set to be good at it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And it goes back again. The thing I like about what you're saying here is that anybody can improve those things, right? Those 3 things that you're talking about: values, attitude, and skill. It's like the last podcast we spoke about empathy and how empathy is a muscle you have to exercise. You have to grow that. I think that people can grow in their attitude. They can grow in their values. Now, a lot of values are instilled in you. However, you can learn to have better values than you did before through trial and error, through mentorship, right? And skills. Obviously, skills can increase with practice, with tutelage, with, again, a mentor of some kind. I love the fact that these things are written into our DNA, but yet we can still grow in each of these areas.
Right. Absolutely. And I'll be the first to admit that going through adversities, it helps you grow those attributes. Going through something that sucks, it will potentially change your attitude towards something, right? And it's how you allow it to change you is how you grow with your own DNA and your own characteristics. If you go through an adverse situation and you start blaming everything and everyone around you, instead of having the mental fortitude to get through that adversity, you're only hurting yourself in the long run because you are losing a positive attitude that could be a key component of your DNA for your success. If you are in a skill set that you just take time off and you never focus on it again, and that pours over, and then you develop a poor attitude from it or have poor values, that could also be a detriment to your success. And as you pointed out, I think there are characteristics that we can add to the toolbox along the way. But when you look at the 3 buckets that you always need to be adding what we would call dividend deposits into, is what are you doing to increase your skill set on a regular basis, whether that's an engineer, a carpenter, a doctor, a financial advisor, whatever that skill set may be, what are you doing on a regular basis to ensure that you're sharpening those skills? Because you always need to be adding to those contributions of your DNA. Values. What are you doing on a regular basis to affirm your values of who you are? Are you going towards that gray line of a lack of integrity? Are you going towards that gray line of being dishonest or just not being as empathetic to others, right? What are your values as a person, and what are you doing to make sure that those values are rooted in a solid foundation moving forward? And then attitude. Are you waking up every single day with just the attitude of woe is me and this world sucks? And that's everyone right now. But you get to make the decision on that attitude. You get to decide of how you're going to carry your day. One of the things that I really admire about my wife, Bora, is every day, and her and I have talked about this a lot lately, is the first thing she does when she wakes up is she gives the day to the Lord and says, you're going to place the conversations and the people in my life today to make me a better person. And when you approach life with that attitude of, I don't know what's in it for me today, but I'm going to listen and just behave in a way to honor my values and my attitude and my skill set. When you approach every day like that, that's what gives you the DNA sequence that you need to have and develop that element of success.
Yeah, absolutely.
Eric, what characteristics outside some of those that I just mentioned, because I know I didn't cover all of them, but what characteristics do you think maybe create the DNA makeup of someone's success? Is there anything that you would add into the kind of that box or that, let's call it that molecule of success?
Man, you covered a ton. And this is just getting a little bit personal. This is something that I'm personally working on. And about a year ago, I actually made a screen cover, or, you can put a photo on your phone. So when you pick it up, that's the first thing you see when you unlock your phone. You know what I'm talking about?
Yep.
I actually made one that it was just 3 words: assume the best. Assume the best, because I needed to be reminded that not everyone that I'm dealing with, and this was just kind of how it was reflecting my own attitude, but there was a lot of times where I just felt like other people were out to not get me, but out for their own agenda. And so I had to change the lens I was looking at things through. And I had to put that on my phone just to remind myself on a daily basis. And I kept it there for probably about a month, but I had to assume the best, meaning that I have to assume that the person I'm dealing with wants the best for our entire situation, not just themselves. Right. They want the best for us as a group, whether it's work, whether it's church, whether it's community, whether it's whatever. And are there people that are only thinking of themselves and they're conniving and they're doing this and that? Yes. However, that's not the vast majority. I think the vast majority of people want this country to get back on track and everybody to get along in a much better fashion. And we could get into politics, but we're not going to. I think that people want to respect other people's ideas, beliefs, religions, opinions. That's what they want to do. Sometimes that gets lost in the shuffle in the heat of an argument or the heat of, whatever, or the media, especially when the media just constantly is bashing, the left and bashing the right and everybody in between. And like you said, it's our choice to wake up every day. So the one thing that I'm adding is just, I have to remind myself, or I had to, I've gotten much better at it, but I'll find myself slipping into that thinking, man, they're really only thinking of themselves. And I have to get out of that mindset because that's not true. I'm creating that. And if I'm creating that, I'm not approaching them as vulnerable as I should be or could be and willing to resolve a situation or work on a project or whatever. I have to be able to listen and hear and know that they're not just out for themselves. Even though it may feel that way at the moment, it might be my feeling and it might be incorrect, right? I have to get rid of my pride and understand that I've got to do a little bit of self-examination. So I think that that's the only thing I can incorporate with the other things that you said.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with them. And it's funny that you had mentioned that, because so I have this book, and our youngest son was named after Marcus Aurelius. And Marcus Aurelius was known as a philosopher in Stoicism. And so what I do is I read through his letters of Stoicism from this book that I have, and then I write notes of my interpretation of what he's talking about to my sons. So one day they will receive this book, hopefully when I'm gone, and they don't know that I'm creating this, and they can go back and read the book and then read my notes of my thoughts and opinions on those principles being presented in the book.
That's awesome.
And I read it this morning, and this is a piece of that Marcus Aurelius has said, and it kind of aligns with what you just said. And the chapter is The Power of Opinion. And it says, remember these powers you have from nature: to reject false thinking, to limit desire, to be free from anxiety, to let nothing bad into the soul, examine each thing closely and determine its real nature, and make use of each thing according to its value.
That's awesome. Yeah.
That is the epitome of really forming your DNA of who you are to have a better understanding of those around you. But you can only do that internally. And if you aren't able to do it internally, then you can really never solve the problem or have a true understanding of the value of the items and the nature around you. And it's funny because you mentioned your phone case cover. And I have a sticky note that I post on my computer and on the TV screen and my phone sometimes, things like that. And it's one sentence, and it says, I am the problem, I am the solution. And I use that a lot to hold true to my value system, that no matter what has been either done to me or what wrong I have done, the problem lies within me, but I also hold the solution to that problem regardless of what it is or who caused it.
Absolutely.
And those are the things that, to our listeners, I want to challenge you with, of what's your value system? What could you be doing to increase your skill set? And what are your attitudes towards everything that you hold to be true to your life? And if you're paying those little deposits into each one of those categories on a daily basis, I can assure you, not only will your anxiety go away, but you may find yourself in a better place in a few months. And that's the encouragement that I want to give to you for those listening today.
Johnny, that was fantastic. I mean, that was beautifully said, and I agree. I'm hoping that some of our listeners are hearing that. I know that you're still coming off the high of getting, some statistics and having over 4,000 downloads of the podcast. That's great. So we know people are listening, and I hope they're gaining something from it. I know I am. So I want to, again, thank you for all the content that you put out. And of course, we want to thank you, the listener, for tuning in and listening to the Elements of Success podcast with Johnny Dawson. If you haven't subscribed to the podcast yet, please click the subscribe now button below. This way, when Johnny comes out with a new podcast, it'll show up directly on your listening device. This makes it much easier to share these podcasts with your friends and family. Again, this is Eric Johnson, just reminding you what Johnny said earlier is so true. We have the choice of the attitude we wake up with in the morning. And I believe it's written in our DNA to be successful and to be conquerors. And if we're choosing to have a different attitude, a lot of times we're choosing to be victims. And that's not us. That's not written in our DNA. Again, thank you so much for joining us. We'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you for listening to the Elements of Success podcast. If you have not subscribed to the podcast, please click the subscribe button below. If you know anyone who would benefit from listening to this podcast, click the share button.